Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of Blackhawks Banter, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. And you can listen to us on a preferred podcast platform, whichever one you prefer. Since we are kind of in the doldrums of the off-season, we actually did take last week off to relax and regroup. But I, for one, am missing our weekly banter, which we're super excited to be back at it this week. So we have our usual crew with us today. We have Brooke Lofurno, Greg Boysen, Shaun Filippelli, and I am Gail Kauchak. Let's get started by evaluating some off-season moves. Each season, every NHL team makes tweaks and changes to its roster, and the offseason was no exception for the Blackhawks. Whether they felt that they didn't fit in with the future direction of the team or couldn't agree on contract negotiations, these players will no longer be Blackhawks this upcoming campaign. We have defenseman Adam Boqvist, center David Kampf, defenseman Duncan Keith, Vinny Hinostroza forward, P.S. Suter forward, and Nikita Zadorov defenseman. So my first question that I'd like to pose to you guys is, of the above player losses, who are you most disappointed about leaving and why? And I'd like to go ahead and start with Shaun tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say right off the bat, P.S. Suter, I was shocked to see that news that they didn't find a way to lock him in. Some of the other names on this list are obviously surprising in their own regards, but the fact that they let this guy go, entering his mid-20s, entering the prime of his career, the prime of his athletic ability, coming off a rookie season that was impressive in a lot of regards, despite the fact that he had streaky production, former Swiss MVP, Swiss League MVP, winner, just like teammate Kubalik. It just seemed like all of the signs pointed to the fact that Suter could really do some damage with this team as they continue to rebuild. And he even proved to be versatile. He could play center, he could play on the wing, and he just always looked calm and confident. So he was someone that I was really looking forward to see how he was going to mesh with this team as they moved forward and progressed, because when you look at his track record and his resume, this is a guy that just continued to have year-over-year progression in any league he's played. So I expected much of the same in the NHL, and I think they really missed out by not locking him in.
Yeah, Suter was quite a surprise. I thought they were going to re-sign him as well. Brooke, who are you most disappointed with leaving?
Honestly, I don't even know why we're doing this question, because I know we're all thinking that we're really upset that Zadorov is gone, and we all really wanted to keep him. So we can just skip this, to be honest. I'm just kidding. I was going to say Suter, but I think that's kind of a popular answer. I think we all know how we feel about that. But I said Vinny Hinostroza, and I know that probably might seem like a weird answer because I understand he's not Suter and he's not like this big time kind of player. But I liked what he showed after being reacquired at the trade deadline. And I thought he had a good production. He kind of provides just a good depth for the bottom six that was really needed. And to be honest, I'm really going to miss the line of Kubalik. Kubalik, Hagel, and Hinostroza. I'm really going to miss that line with the Bash brothers. I thought that was entertaining. It's not one that's going to win you a Stanley Cup, but it was entertaining and it was fun. So I'm going to miss that, to be honest. And plus he only signed for 1 year, $1 million in Buffalo. And I think that was pretty cheap. So I think we could have retained him for pretty cheap, but I understand it can go both ways. It's not like it's a huge loss that hurts us either way, but I still am personally going to miss him.
Yeah, I think that Hinostroza is definitely going to miss Chicago too. He's from Bartlett, I believe. So he was really, really happy to be able to come back and be around. And I think he was really hoping to get re-signed. So that's a bit of a bummer all the way around. Greg, who is your pick that you're going to miss the most from the losses?
I'm going to go with Adam Boqvist. I still think he's going to be a very dynamic offensive defenseman, maybe not the greatest all-around defenseman, but in today's NHL, so many teams want offense from the blue line. So I think overall they kind of mishandled him. I think they rushed him to the NHL too fast. They didn't give him enough proper development. Then they gave up on him too fast. But on the flip side, maybe he never was going to be that player here. Maybe he needs a different, system, a different team, different outlook to succeed. But he's still way too young. I don't think he's even scratched the surface on how good he can be. On the flip side of that, though, I mean, Stan Bowman gave up Boquist to get the guy he thought was going to be this team's elite number one defender, Seth Jones. And if Jones turns out to be that player that he's going to be paid to be, then I'm okay with it. So that's the guy I'm most disappointed in. But if Jones becomes that stud defender, then I won't be that disappointed because it would be worth it.
Yep, I would have to agree with that. I guess we'll go on to my pick here. I'm thinking that you guys probably all thought that I would pick David Kampf since I've always sang his praises as the ultimate underdog and, his attributes on the faceoff circle and as a defensive side of his game. But I'm going to have to say, kind of along the same lines of Greg, with the losses, you also get the pickup. So with the acquisitions of Tyler Johnson and I'm probably going to Juhar Kara, maybe that's how you say it, from the Oilers. I could see why the Blackhawks would part with Kampf. Johnson and Kara are both centers, good face-off numbers, responsible defensively, and they can add more offensively probably than him. So I guess it does make sense. They even signed Kara for less than Kampf, $975,000 versus $1.5 million. So I guess I'm going to have to agree with Shaun here, and I say that my pick would most likely be Suter as well, if he is Suter. And I think that they were playing some hardball with the financials with him since they picked up a few of the more higher paid veterans. Like I talked about before, you mentioned Seth Jones, obviously huge contract there. And I'm not sure if I would have paid Suter $3.5 million for 2 seasons as well. That's what his cap is with the Red Wings. So kudos for him for getting that, him and his agent. But from a purely hockey standpoint, I think that Suter was a really good fit. Shaun mentioned it. He was a good fit with this retooling team. He took on a larger role really than he was ready for last season, but he still performed admirably, and he was just a great complementary player. You could put him up and down the lineup. So I think that his ceiling is high, and the Red Wings were smart to pick him up. So time will tell if the Blackhawks will eventually regret this move. We'll see. And then we'll get on to this next question, and we can probably be pretty quick with this, but we'll go ahead anyway, just for poops and giggles. On the other side of the coin here, which of all these players, the above-mentioned players, are you least disappointed with their departure? And I'll go ahead again and say, okay, who do we have? Boquist, Kampf, Keith, Hinostroza, Suter, and Zadorov. And who are you least disappointed with? Brooke.
I said David Kampf. I'm really sorry, Gail. I didn't want to hurt your feelings with that one. But I mostly said that because he's a good depth player, I think. Obviously, he won the most faceoffs on the team, which was a really nice thing because this team could not win a faceoff to save their lives last season. But I feel like his skill set maybe is more useful on a contending team because without the faceoffs, he didn't really provide much else. So I think actually with him going to the Maple Leafs, it's actually a pretty good fit. But overall, I kind of thought what he was kind of replaceable at this point now that they got Tyler Johnson. And like you said, with Jujar Kara, I think might make an impact. And with Henrik Borgstrom and all these other kind of rookies that are coming in. So I was actually the least disappointed in that one, I think, out of all the moves.
Yeah, I hear you. That makes sense. Like I said, I ended up not picking him for the one that I thought got away as well. So who else do we have? Greg, go ahead. Who's your pick?
Well, Gail, I'm going to kind of get a little revenge for you here because I went with Vinny Hinostroza. I know that's not popular among this group, but I mean, he's a guy. He didn't really move the needle much when he came here. He's not going to move the needle much when he's gone. He is what he is. He's a bottom 6 average NHLer. So, I mean, if that's who your hopes and aspirations were upon, then there's other problems. Good kid, nice player, but, he's easily replaceable. And, the Hawks have some younger players that can do at least exactly what he did. Time to let them go. And those guys have potential to possibly do more. I think we're kind of at the point with Hinostroza where it's not potential anymore. He is what he is, and that's what he is. So, yeah, sure, he didn't sign for much, but you've got other homegrown prospects you want to get in there. So that move was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's right. He was back again for those 12 games. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we all kind of saw the writing on the wall on that one. No surprises there. Shaun, who's your pick?
I feel like a broken record for those who watch our show religiously, so I apologize, but I got to stick with Zadorov. I mean, from the minute that they signed him, I didn't want him here. So him being gone is certainly news that I was happy to hear. And that might sound harsh, but again, I'll reiterate, I just never saw the fit. I know people want to make arguments that he came in for a reason and he did his job and he did it well. I get it. I get that he found a better fit throughout the latter end of the season, but his style of play just didn't seem to mesh well with what I expected of the Blackhawks style of play. So call it what you will. He's gone, and I'm happy for that. I think he'll still do well somewhere else. I think he still has a skill set that's useful. I just didn't see it being utilized in Chicago. And the fact that they got any kind of return for him was a bonus.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I picked Zadorov as well, that I really was not going to lose any sleep over him leaving. The writing was pretty much on the wall when they brought Riley Stillman in at the trade deadline last season. He very, very similar style of play. They got him for cheaper. They signed him for cheaper. And then when you add the additional off-season additions of well-rounded defensemen in Seth Jones and Jake McCabe, there wasn't any space for Zadorov anymore. So I'm actually looking forward to what this new defensive group can bring to the table this upcoming season. So, all right, let's move on to some goaltending talk for Shaun here. We got to put our goaltending in. There's a whole new dynamic right now with veteran goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury coming in, committing to play for Chicago. Last season, Kevin Lankinen established himself as the starter between Malcolm Subban, Colin Delia, and himself. But his numbers faltered as the season went along, and many feel that he was thrust into the starting role too soon. So give us your thoughts on the balance of time that you'd like to see between the veteran Fleury and his protege Lankinen. And let's go ahead and start with Greg.
I mean, you don't bring in a guy like Fleury and pay him that kind of money to, do a split 50-50 tandem. Ideally, you'd like to have a 1A, 1B, but I think Fleury has earned the right to be the guy, to be the start of the season. But you also have to be careful with how you use him. You still want to develop Lankinen, and you still, you got to be careful with Fleury. I mean, he's 37, I believe, which is younger than me, but for hockey players, it's not a spring chicken. So, I would say give Fleury 2 out of every 3 games and then see how it goes. You're going to have that point of the season where you get one of the two is going to struggle, the other, and then you're going to hit a point where one of the two is going to get hot. So ride a hot hand. If Lankinen goes in and gets you 3 or 4 in a row, you can stay with him. 82 games is a long, long season. And if you want to be contending for a playoff spot down that stretch run, which this team is built for, we'll see if they can get to that point. You're going to want to take it easy with Fleury in those November, December games, so he's still fresh come March and April when you need those points. So Fleury's the starter, but ideally you'd like to maybe do 50, 55 games for Fleury and then get Lankinen about 30 starts would be ideally how I would see that.
Okay, sounds good. How about you, Shaun?
I mean, Greg hit all the points on the head there, but I'll just add to that. You're not going to bring in a future Hall of Famer to not let him play, but I'll take that even one step further and say that I honestly wouldn't be surprised, and whether we'll ever know this is unlikely, but if Fleury's camp spoke to Chicago's camp and simply said, listen, he's only going to show up and he's only going to report if you're going to guarantee that he's going to play X amount of games, because this has been a guy who's proven that he wants to be in the net as much as possible. He's proven that. He said that. Everyone's been aware of that around the league for years now. And he's had a couple years where he's struggled to maintain the crease, not because of his play, but just because of circumstance over in Vegas. And obviously he won that spot back last year and they still mishandled him there for whatever reason. But to our benefit, he's now a Blackhawk. So I just wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of plan in place that does stipulate that he will have guaranteed playing time. And I would have to say that I can expect even a little more. I'd probably say between 55 and 60 starts is where I'd sort of put him. I know he's getting up there in age, but he's clearly proving to still be a superstar in his own right and getting the job done, let alone the most recent Vezina winner. So that's where the Hawks need him to be. If they were still in a rebuild, different story. They've shown the world that that's not what they want to call themselves anymore. So if they're going to want to contend, then he needs to be on the net. So 55, 60 games would help him. And frankly, that would even help Lankinen. It'll help Lankinen grow under him and learn more and progress in his own right as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Shaun, that I think that they probably did make some kind of deal with Fleury to say, we're going to guarantee you a certain amount. How about you, Brooke? What do you have to add about the tandem of Fleury and Lankinen?
Yeah, I think you guys all pretty much hit it on the head. I think that Fleury is going to get most of the starts. And to be honest, I don't think we're going to see much of Lankinen this year, if I'm being perfectly honest. Obviously, this team wants to contend, so I really don't see him performing unless Fleury needs a rest, it's a back-to-back game, Fleury's injured, or they don't clinch a playoff spot. That's really the only time I think we'll see significant playing time from it. Otherwise, I think it's going to be pretty scarce because, like you guys said, you don't bring in Fleury to sit him on the bench. That's why it wasn't working in Vegas. You can't have two number one goalies in Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury for them to sit on the bench. So yeah, I do think he's going to take the brunt of the season, which is totally fine by me because obviously he's the proven goaltender here.
Yeah, the thing that I just want to add to the end of this is I just don't want to see Fleury get really just stuck in that backup role. He's just, sitting on the bench all the time and not really developing. I understand that Fleury is definitely going to get the majority, and I think that we're all in agreement that he should. But, of course, not a 50-50 split, like Greg said. But, I mean, I'd really like to see something more like 60-40, and I think you guys, with your numbers, are kind of leaning the same way. Just so that Lankinen can develop and can be mentored and isn't just sitting around and kind of the season goes to waste for him. So that's I guess where I would come from. It'll be interesting to see what kind of tandem they come together with and who plays how many games and how it all pans out. But regardless, the Blackhawks are definitely sitting relatively pretty in that, hopefully. So. All right. Well, we are about midway through the show, so I just want to remind you to subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube, follow us on Twitter. You can follow all of us individually. You can see our Twitter handles on the screen, on our little screens here. And we also have our own Blackhawks Banter account now. So you won't miss, please follow us there so you won't miss any of our columns and shows. And that handle is at THW Blackhawks. So please give us a follow there. We'd love to have you around. And now let's move on to the Alex Nylander extension. The Blackhawks took care of some final business on Monday, August 16th, signing the last of their free agents. Alex Nylander, he signed with the club for 1 year, $874,125. He did not play last season because he was recovering from knee surgery. And so it's really kind of another prove-it deal for the 23-year-old winger. So let's just go around the table and say, what do you think of this deal and Nylander's potential for the upcoming season? Shaun?
You hit it on the head by saying it's a perfect prove-it deal. I think this is a great opportunity for both sides because it locks Nylander in, but it's a very low-risk, high-reward scenario for the Blackhawks. I mean, what they're paying him relative to what they're paying most of the rest of their roster is pennies on the dollar. So giving him an opportunity to come back, give him security for the year, and really say to him, here's your chance. You should be healthy. Let's see what you can do for a full season is going to give even us as fans an opportunity to see what really is he capable of. I mean, Nylander's had a rough go, by his own doing for the most part through Buffalo when he first started in the league and then coming over to Chicago, not really impressing many people, but there's been a reset of sorts. So he has a chance to come back and really change some of those perceptions and create new ones. Again, I think it's a perfect deal. It's low risk, high reward, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
You are excited to see what he can do. How about you, Brooke?
Me too. He's my favorite, as you guys all know. I was so excited. To be honest, yeah, I think money-wise, it's totally fine. I mean, it doesn't hurt us in any way, and if he comes in and completely stinks up the joint, then they're not stuck with him. So I think it's fine for that reason. And I understand why Blackhawks fans get frustrated with him. I get it too, because he was taken 8th overall in the draft. I mean, this guy has the skill set, but we have yet to see it consistently. So now he's got a chip on his shoulder. This is kind of like his really big, kind of like last rodeo in a way to really kind of prove himself. So I think most players play well when they have a chip on their shoulder. So I actually am excited to see what he does with that adversity, but if he's able to bounce back, this will be a steal. But if not, it's really no harm at all because he'll probably just go back to free agency. So, but I am excited. I think he should do well and do it more consistently.
Okay. Greg, are you agreeing with your colleagues here about Alex Nylander?
I mean, the deal is fine. I mean, it's as both said, it's a low risk, potentially a high reward deal. Obviously, Nylander is getting a long leash here to see what he can do. Stan Bowman took a lot of criticism for that trade, giving up, Henry Jokiharju and not getting much in return so far. So he's going to be given the chance to succeed because, you got to be proven right that you made that deal. As far as expectations go for this season, potential for the upcoming season, I don't have any. That's my way I'm taking it with him, because then you can never be disappointed. You can only be pleasantly surprised. He's just never shown me that he can be a legit NHL player. Shown flashes, just never the consistency that you want to see. He'll have 2 or 3 games you're like, hey, this might be something, and then he'll play 5 games and you don't even know he's in the lineup. So he's still 23, so there's still a chance something can happen. I'm just not going to hold my breath on that. He has a chance to really have a big year and solidify his NHL future going forward. But if he has another down season where he doesn't perform, it could be one of those situations where he's not even in the league next year. Could be seeing himself go back to Europe or an AHL only contract. So it's up to him, and we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think he was given every chance in the world in 2019-20 season. And, he played in the top 6 the majority of the time. He was put online with Patrick Kane, I believe, and he just didn't do much with it. So I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that Greg's wrong, but I'm kind of in the same boat here, where I just don't hold out a whole lot of hope for him. But at least the Blackhawks obviously didn't pay a whole lot of money to find that out. So hopefully Greg and I are pleasantly surprised, and hopefully Shaun and Brooke are on the right path here. So
I'm laughing because me and Greg's like my Debbie Downer sidekick, because I'm like, oh, I like Vinny, and he's like, nah, it's fine, let him go.
We're doing the yin and yang routine.
Yeah,
tonight.
exactly.
Whatever you say, I'll give you up.
And I'm like, oh, Nylander might be good. Nah, I don't think so.
Gotta have some balance here. We can't all be sunshine and lollipops.
I love it.
Sunshine and unicorns. All right. So the Nylander extension actually adds yet another forward to a plethora of forwards that are signed with the Blackhawks, and not everyone is going to have a spot as an everyday player. So in your opinion, which forward do you feel is going to find themselves this season on the outside looking in? What do you think, Brooke?
I actually love this question because I feel like most of these players are on the outside looking in. It seems like everyone is going to be battling all over the lineup for spots. So my first thought that actually came to my mind was Ryan Carpenter. And I think it was because I did his season grade. So it kind of just came to my mind, but it's only because the team picked up 2 centers in Jujhar Khaira and Tyler Johnson. And then I don't know how Henrik Borgstrom or Lucas Reichel fits in there, or Jonathan Toews or Kirby Dach, or even Dylan Strome. Like, there's just a lot of bodies there. It doesn't seem like a lot of room. And especially now that David Kampf is gone, I figured that Ryan Carpenter might follow if that's what they're planning on doing. It just given the reins over to the new rookies that they have really high expectations for. So I do think he might find himself on the outside looking in a weird way.
No, I see where you're coming from. Kind of going with the younger players that are coming in. But I really kind of hope that you're wrong, because I just think that he has a lot to add with his grit and fourth line tenacity and penalty killing too. And I'm almost, you mentioned Kampf, you might go the same way. I'm almost wondering if with Kampf gone, that gives Carpenter a bit of a leg up. But we'll see. Greg, who's your pick to be on the outside looking in?
To me, it came down to one of those veteran guys on the bottom 6, Carpenter and a Brett Conley. I think those are the guys that are kind of be shuffled in and out for that 12th spot every night, and kind of one guy's in the box, the other guy's on the ice. I think Carpenter has a little bit of an advantage over Conley, so that's why I'll go with Conley as the guy on the outside looking at him. Still, I understand why the Blackhawks acquired him. They had to take his contract in order to get Borgstrom, who they were high on. Okay, fine. But he really doesn't fit into this team right now. And Carpenter, As you mentioned, Gail, he can kill penalties. He's a little more versatile. He can play the wing and center. And, he even produced a little bit on the power play last year. So that's why I'm going to go with Brett Conley. It's a shame that you got a guy that's making $3 million cap hit. That's probably going to be a healthy scratch, but that's just the way these things happen sometimes. So, hopefully maybe they can find a way to alleviate that and find a home for him on another team, but I doubt it.
Yeah, some kind of like a mid-season move or something to make everybody happy on both sides. Okay, Shaun, who is your Blackhawk on the outside?
I look right at Carpenter and Connolly as well, to be honest, but I'm not going to steal those answers. I'm just going to say that they come to mind for the same reasons you guys have all noted. But to me, I still have a funny suspicion that Strome might not be a Blackhawk, whether it's by the start of the season or throughout it. So as far as freeing up roster positions, trading him off certainly means that there is more potential to find Nylander a better fit. The Hawks will still have some shuffling to do. They're still over the roster limit as we speak. But it just feels like that trade might be part of what gets Nylander more playing time in the lineup, beyond the fact that there is still going to be players, the Connollys and the Carpenters of the world, even the Kurashevs, for instance, on the younger side, if they're not proving it or if they're not needed on any particular night, they might not make it in the lineup. But again, I think a potential trade here of Strome could easily open up a spot that Nylander just slips right into.
This is our regular PSA on our show about why isn't Strome traded yet? We bring this up every week.
I guess they just can't find I'm sure that they tried, but they can't find a good taker for it. And, I think that Strome's, his fortunes kind of are going to rely on whether Taze comes back and is healthy. Because if he doesn't, then that could kind of be a bit of a shoe-in, even though I know he wants to play center, but he could also play wing as well. So we'll see. I'm just going to, real quick, add my take. I did actually also pick Brett Connolly. And just to add a little bit to what Greg said, I just don't think that he ever really had a fit with this team. Like you said, he was really just kind of the person that they took so that they could get Borgstrom. Oh, we'll take this money off of your hands. So in the 10 games that he did play last year, he played on the fourth line. I looked back at my line combination notes. Fourth line, I think pretty much every game, and he only averaged, he was just over 11 minutes of ice time. So I just don't think that there's a fit. And with, like you said, Taze and Nylander coming in, Johnson and Kara are additions, and then you have prospects Borgstrom, Henrik Borgstrom, and Lucas Reichel knocking on the door, and I don't see a fit for Connolly. So unfortunately, like you said, Greg, that is the way it is. So let's go ahead and wrap up our show with our final topic here. Our friends over at The Athletic recently did a fan survey, and there was a lot of really interesting takes from that. But I was intrigued especially by one of the questions. I was curious to see what the smaller panel kind of thought about this. So the question is, who do you believe is most likely to emerge as a true top pairing defenseman? So I know we've added a lot of defensemen, and so the prospects have kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. So if we could kind of regroup back to them, here's our choices: Nicolas Beaudin, Wyatt Kalynuk, Ian Mitchell, Alex Vlasic, or none. Greg, what do you think?
That's a tough one. It's hard to predict with these guys. Like Alex Vlasic, I honestly haven't seen enough of him to have a strong opinion one way or the other. So it was easy to scratch him out right away. I don't think Mitchell, Kalynuk, they could be nice players. I don't think they're top pairing defensemen. I didn't want to say none either, because I really think Beaudin has a chance to be a really good, well-rounded defenseman. When he got regular playing time in Rockford the last couple seasons, he was really good, solid in his own zone, and then contributed a little bit offensively too. So if there's anybody on that list that has a chance to be a top pairing defenseman, that's the guy I would go with. He's a first round draft pick, and he's still very young and still got a lot to learn. With defensemen, you really got to be patient. It's something we're not very good at doing here in Chicago with any young player, especially defensemen. But I think the additions this year actually are going to help him, because then it gets him a full season in Rockford for all three of those guys is good. All three of those guys were probably rushed to the NHL and struggled at times for it. So if all those guys get to Rockford and then we see where we're at next year, it could be a good thing. And to be honest with you, back to that first, coming full circle, that first topic, actually the second one who I was most disappointed about, if you would have told me in that Seth Jones deal you have to give up Boquist or Beaudin, I would have said give him Boquist instead of Beaudin, just because I think Boquist will probably be the better offensive defenseman, but Beaudin will be the better all-around defenseman. So I have high hopes for him. So don't bet on it because I'm saying it, but that's my opinion.
Okay, all right. Your pick is Beaudin. Shaun, who's your pick out of those, if any, to be top pairing defenseman?
I'm scared to even start my answer because you never want to go against the guy who knows all about the prospects, but I'm going to. I'm going to say I like Beaudin as well. To be honest, Greg made me a fan of Beaudin when he talked so highly of him throughout the beginning of the season. So I really like Beaudin, but something about what Ian Mitchell brings to the game and watching him play and watching his confidence and his demeanor on and off the ice, I was an instant fan of that kid when he broke into the lineup. I know his numbers don't do him a lot of justice, and he didn't do a lot to impress per se in that regard throughout last season, but I mean, a lot of the Hawks didn't. There's just, again, something about the way that he was able to play so confidently and so dynamically right away just really caught my attention. And I think that, I know that skill doesn't always translate from one level to another, especially when you're talking collegiate to the NHL level. But this is a former Hobie Baker nominee, so he's got the credentials there. He's got the ability clearly, and I think with a better supporting cast around him, we're going to see an elevation to his play in the coming years. So I think he could make that cut. I don't suspect it's going to happen anytime soon per se. I mean, he still is only 22, but it just seems like all the traits are there, and I think he can become a top pairing D.
And he was actually probably the most highly touted prospect, I would say, of all of them, right? I would assume. So yeah, good, decent pick there. Good pick. How about you, Brooke? Who's your pick?
This is actually kind of a scary list of names, to be honest, because it's not names that immediately pop out at you that you're like, oh my gosh, this is the guy, which is kind of scary or actually really good for us because that means we'll be pleasantly surprised. But my first thought had to be Beaudin only because of where he was drafted as a first-round draft pick. That usually should translate to number one defenseman. But then after that, my thought was Ian Mitchell too, only because the expectations were so high. I mean, Stam literally wanted to take this guy out of college and get him on the Blackhawks right away. And I know he had his ups and downs, which is totally normal as part of the defenseman development. So I don't hold that against him at all. But maybe expectations wise, I would think it would be him, only because, like I said, there was just way too much hype around him. And I think Blackhawk fans were so excited because of how hyped up the Blackhawks made him. It seemed like we were getting another like Duncan Keith or something like that. So who knows?
Okay, well, this was a good question because I actually am coming in. I have a hunch about Wyatt Kalynuk. He surprised a lot this season. He had to wait his turn actually behind Mitchell and Beaudin in the depth chart, but then when he did get a shot, he just never looked back. He looked at 21 games with the Blackhawks. He was responsible defensively, and he's got an offensive flair that he showed, and he wasn't afraid to utilize it. Again, my line combination notes, he played a lot on the second pairing with Duncan Keith. And he just always appeared calm, cool, and collected out there. Colleton trusted him, and I think he's got some potential. Top pairing, okay. Top pairing, is that like top four? I think he might be a bit of a sleeper. So that's good. We all kind of have some well-rounded answers there. By the way, the fans in the survey, they did rank Kalynuk 27.5% likely to become top pairing defenseman. Ian Mitchell was next with 25.1%, Beaudin 15%, and Vlasic only 4.7% because 27.7% of fans said nobody. None of them are going to be top pairing defenseman. So it was all across the board there.
If only they had Greg's brain.
No, nobody wants that. It's a scary place.
We'll have to revisit this 4 years from now. I have to put a reminder somewhere because who knows? Like you said, you just don't know until it happens. So. Okay, well, that's going to do it for our episode of Blackhawks Banter today. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube. We are just one of many shows out there. We've got shows on Maple Leafs, Buffalo Sabres, Detroit Red Wings, Edmonton Oilers, and even our newest team in the league, the Seattle Kraken, has podcasts. So we have got it going on here at the Hockey Writers. Thank you, Brooke, Greg, and Shaun for being here today, and everybody else for watching. Don't be afraid to reach out. We love engaging with you all. Comment on our Twitter, comment on YouTube. Send us your comments, and we are happy to answer your questions or just talk Blackhawks. So feel free to do that. That'll do it. Have a great week, everybody, and we will see you next time.